I was 1,000 miles north of Moscow, close to what had been the heart of the communist prison system, the Gulag.
Every inch of this railway was built by convicts, by prisoners of the Gulag, and it's known as the railway built on bones.
My journey took me into a distant and unknown Russia. Vladimir Putin claims that as president he's given his people wealth, stability and pride. I was traveling across this bleak landscape to discover the truth about Putin's Russia. The start of the railway is in Syktyvkar, capital of the Commie Republic. It's election day for the Duma, the Russian parliament. The polls had already been boycotted by European election observers as unfair. And I'd been tipped off that I could film something that no Russian television station would dare.
We're going to School 36 in Syktyvkar because we've just got information that some of the parties are handing out money so that they can literally buy votes.
Russia's media is largely controlled by Putin's supporters and was predicting a landslide for his United Russia party. But I'd made contact with Pavel, a student activist and political blogger. He claims he'd been offered 400 rubles, £10, to vote for United Russia. He says he was told to take a picture of his vote to show his United Russia contact.
Pavel, what have you just done?
I've just voted for the United Russia, and then I took a picture of my passport and of the ballot, and then I destroyed the bulletin.
You destroyed the ballot?
Yeah, I destroyed the ballot after that.
And why are you telling us this?
Because I think that these things are terrible for Russia, and I'm not afraid for myself, I'm afraid for the future of my country. Будете, да? Да, хорошо, можно 15.50.
The caller was his friend Yulia. She'd also been offered money for her vote and had the location for the payoff.
Нет, лучше давай где-нибудь встретимся, потому что я, может быть...
Pavel and I waited in our car while Yulia went to meet agents in a taxi, who she said would hand over the 400 ruble payment. Across the country there'd been allegations of vote rigging, but this was hard evidence caught on our camera.
Hello, I'm from British Television. My name's Sam Kiley. Are you paying people to vote for the United Russia Party?
Who said so? What do you mean?
Yulia here tells me that she's going to be paid 400 rubles to vote for the United Russia Party. Have you yourselves been paid to recruit people to the United Russia Party? What's she saying?
It's my private car. You didn't ask the owner of the car to film him.
While I was talking to the agents, a queue of others wanting to sell their votes was growing behind me.
Hello. How much are you expecting? Marina here has turned up for her payment. She says that she's been offered 400 rubles to go and vote for the United Russia Party.
The taxi suddenly took off.
Stop! The taxi did a U-turn to try and get away from us, hid behind these garages. They've still got Yulia, our student contact, in the car.
Hey!
Oi! You've got to let her go, okay? Let her go. You have no business holding her in this car.
He locked the door.
Yeah. What's he saying?
Where are you from?
We're from Britain. We're British Television, Channel 4.
Британское телевидение, 4-й канал.
Yulia was driven away, so Pavel and I went to the offices where he writes his blog to try to contact her. Yulia said she was fine. She'd been released, but thanks to us, she hadn't been paid. Pavel's mentor is Sergei Sorokin, the editor of a local online news site. Sergei said he planned to expose the vote rigging on the net.
Оно было не очень распространено на, скажем, на прошлых выборах в Госдуму.
Sergei's saying that in the previous parliamentary elections, corruption and vote rigging wasn't too much of a problem, but now he says it's massive and it's right across the country.
Sergei used to produce a newspaper, but he said government officials from Putin's United Russia resented coverage of corruption and political scandal. They deny it, but he claims they put pressure on advertisers to strangle his newspaper. And he showed me the last edition.
That's Russian for off. That's the off button, like on the TV, right?
Но дело в том, что в Республике Коми есть так называемые медвежьи углы. Это сотни и сотни деревень и поселков.
Sergei is saying that big cities like Syktyvkar here are extremely rich. They're the shop windows for oil wealth. But he says out in the hinterland of the Komi Republic are hundreds and hundreds of villages and towns that are clinging to life. He describes them as bears' dens, and it's a miracle to him how people even survive there when there's total unemployment and very little to support life.
Putin's United Russia won 64% of the vote, both nationwide and in Komi. In some regions, the results were downright absurd, with almost 100% turnout and more than 90% voting for Putin's party. I began my train journey wondering why, if the ruling party was so popular, it needed to buy votes and apparently shut down newspapers.
I've got essential provisions for travelling on a Russian train: vodka, sausage and bread.
This is the Republic's main artery, built to open up Russia's northern wilderness.
We finally arrived at dissent, which is the oil capital of the Komi Republic.
Oil is the lifeblood of Russia's booming economy. And this is the center of production for Lukoil, Russia's biggest oil company.
From up here there's just miles and miles and miles of tundra and little flares, gas flares from the oil pumping stations, producing absolute millions for Russia.
Russia is the world's biggest oil producer and the second largest exporter. Rising oil prices mean Russia now earns more than £75 billion a year from oil exports. Usinsk has been flooded with money. Even the new cathedral was built with petro-rubles. But economic riches have not bought political freedom.
In Usinsk, there's the local leader of the Other Russia movement, which is led by the chess champion Garry Kasparov. It's an anti-Putin movement. Now, she says she wants to speak to me and that she has some information for me, but she's been very reluctant to do so over the phone, so she's asked me to come in person.
Olga Nesinova, a retired social worker, has been trying to organize local political opposition to parties created by Putin.
Olga's just been on the phone to some of her contacts in the Other Russia party or movement. She's spoken to one member of her movement who says they've got real problems and they're expecting more because their phone has been bugged for the last 2 months.
Olga said oppression was in the air, that you could feel it. Oil companies own the 2 main newspapers in town, and, she said, parties not sanctioned by the Kremlin struggled.
Is there freedom of the press in this town?
Нет.
Is there the right to strike for workers in this town?
Нет.
Is there the right to protest in public in this town?
Нет.
How many political parties in this town are there apart from United Russia?
Ни одна.
Usinsk, a city of about 40,000 people, is 30 years old. And I discovered that the workers who built it were housed in barracks in nearby Parma. And they're still there.
Anna?
Да, здрасте, заходите.
Hello, I'm Sam.
Аня, проходите.
Thank you.
If anyone might have expected to benefit from Russia's oil bonanza, it would have been Anna and Alexander. After all, they helped build Usinsk. So this is your little workshop, Alexander?
Это его мастерская.
This is Alexander's workshop, and the roof is leaking all over the place.
На пенсию я просто не проживу. Пенсия у меня 6 тысяч.
Alexander said his pension wasn't enough to survive on, so at the age of 68 he's working in a baking factory.
На 3 тысячи как я буду жить?
Это
Anna explained that even that isn't going to get them out of this hovel.
чтобы приобрести жилье.
Anna's saying that it would take 9 years if they didn't eat or pay any bills before they could save enough money for a one-room apartment in Usinsk. Anna said that if we think she's badly off, we ought to meet her neighbour, Galina.
Открыла.
Galina also helped to build Usinsk. Do you not get any heating from the town?
Откуда? Вот они.
Galina said that the municipal heating had been cut off because she couldn't afford to pay for it.
30 лишним лет я живу и заслужила то, что живу без отопления, без воды, без всего, короче.
Galina's saying that this is all that she's got to show from 30 years of work. She was a house painter and plasterer and then stoked fires in the banya, the bathhouses. She says she doesn't want to hang herself, but there's very little to live for. And in winter, all that keeps her warm is this heating element on an old brick. These elderly Russians felt no part of Putin's present success, never mind the future. And I found the further north I travelled, the more people said that Putin had failed them. I arrived at Ust-Tsilma, which once thrived on a timber industry which has since collapsed. Today it faces unemployment of 40%. For all Putin's boasts of a successful Russia, a third of all deaths in the country are attributed to alcohol. Oil money hasn't flowed into this bleak landscape, which is one of the highest rates of alcoholism in Russia. This is Valery and this is Alexei. I've just bumped into them on the street. They both admit to being heavy drinkers, and they tell me they get their money for booze by making brooms for cleaning the streets.
Жена умерла 85-го, 12 февраля было 20 лет, как она умерла.
He lost his son in a house fire, who died of 70% burns not long ago. Then his first wife died, and his 22-year-old boy died actually in this kitchen after a drinking bout that lasted 7 months. Do you think things have got better in the last 8 years since Putin has been the president?
Он не экономист, у него образования такого нету, он КГБ.
Не ходил, не пойду, потому что я никому не верю. Я только себе верю.
Valery and Alexei are explaining to me that they certainly, above all, do not support Vladimir Putin or his followers. They say that he's not an economist but an ex-KGB agent, and therefore will bring poverty, not prosperity, to them. And Alexei even says that all the members of the Duma, the Russian parliament, should be hung from lampposts. As the alcohol pandemic gets worse, many Russians are turning to bizarre treatments. I'd heard that a local doctor had come to town with a miracle cure for despairing drunks and was treating them in the local school. There's no shortage of clients for Dr. Hudin's £20 treatment. This is Katya. She's 27. She's come here to see the doctor because she heard about him from a cousin. She drinks maximum, she says, of 3 or 4 bottles of vodka per day. Dr. Hudin's cure starts with a lecture. He then fires a light into his patients' eyes, gives them some prayers and a head rub, and sends them on their way with a bag of herbal tea. Dr. Hudin's patients said they'd lost everything to booze, some even the will to live. I travelled on to Izhmir, about 50 miles further north. Russia leads the world in suicide rates, and this town is one of the worst affected in the country. I went to meet youth worker Igor Kolesev to find out why.
How many young people do you know who've taken their own lives?
Ну, я сразу на память могу назвать около десятка. Плюс около 20 человек среднего и взрослого возраста.
He personally knows 10 children and 20 adults just in this town that have killed themselves in the last few years. But why are young people up here quite so sad that they would kill themselves?
Как получилось, что в газодобывающей республике сюда не проведен газ до сих пор?
He's saying that they feel completely abandoned by the local republic government and the federal government of Putin. They live in a region that's famous for its gas and oil, but they have no gas pipelines, they have no roads to the outside world. The houses here, they've all had to build themselves. They say they get absolutely no help from the state. Do you think things have got worse in the last 8 or so years?
Видимо, все еще сохраняется психология.
He said that Putin had focused too much on nationalism and patriotism, and that people were now losing the right to express themselves. He felt things were stepping back to the Soviet days.
И делать сильное государство.
Igor's fears of a return to a one-party state stayed with me as I approached the end of the Railway of Bones.
Vorkuta, last stop in the journey.
This city was built entirely by Stalin's prisoners. Today, all supplies, including food, are brought in, and coal is taken out. It's estimated that some 23 million people perished in Stalin's gulags, but there were survivors. And here in Vorkuta, I've tracked down a woman called Galina Dahl. She apparently was a German interpreter during the war.
Willkommen.
Thank you. Dankeschön.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Es freut mich sehr.
Nein.
Работала с бригадой женщин, которые строили дорогу.
She and her brigade of other women would build the road during the day with gravel, and at night the male prisoners would come and lay the asphalt. And she says that almost every road in this entire city knows her hands, that she has personally built this city's roads.
Galina told me that when she was in jail, there was nothing here but prison camps, and prisoners were thrown about like kittens by the scruffs of their necks.
Galina's saying that she's seen fascists, she's seen communists, and she's not interested in politics. United Russia, she says, is probably the most decent party, but what matters to her is a clean flat, a couple of meals a day, and a glass of red wine.
Galina is a survivor, and it would appear that even in modern Russia, if you want to get by, you must keep your head down and don't complain. Vorkuta was once a byword for mafia violence. I arranged to meet some local journalists to ask about the town today.
Take a seat.
Irina, a crime reporter, said that things were more stable and that people thanked Putin for this. And now, are there still big gangs operating in Vorkuta?
Ну, криминальные группировки есть, как и по всему, во всей, опять же, стране, куда без них.
15 years ago, like it was across the rest of Russia, there was a lot of gang fighting for territory in Vorkuta. Now the criminal gangs have settled into more legitimate business and they don't rob and steal and blow people up and shoot each other anymore. And now to get a senior gangster killed, it would cost about $50,000. But for an ordinary civilian, it would be a lot less. I'd heard about one killing that was unlikely to have cost very much. The last 8 years of President Putin's rule has been a very dangerous time for investigative reporters. More than a dozen Russian journalists have been murdered, and none of those murders have been satisfactorily solved. But these killings haven't just been confined to journalists. Community activists have also died, and I'm on my way to visit the widower of a woman who was killed 2 years ago. Ludmila Zhirovlia campaigned against local authorities over price rises in rents and services. Ivan showed me where he found the body of his wife.
So Ludmila was shot fighting her assailants through the door. In fact, as Ivan says, the door handle on the outer door was actually broken during the struggle. And she was shot through the chest and the side of her chest, and it exited the first round through her breast, and she fell on the floor here. It's believed she may have cried out because there's another round that finished her off. She was shot in the head.
The killers moved on to her son Konstantin, who was 19. He was smothered and shot in the head. His blood still stains the mattress. Nothing was stolen from the flat, and someone had deleted files which detailed Ludmila's fight with the local authorities from her son's computer. Ludmila's friends are convinced she was killed to silence her criticism of local leaders. The investigation into her murder has been closed for lack of evidence.
How do you feel about the Russian state and the authorities after these events?
He said the authorities had never respected the Russian people, but in the old days opponents were sent to Siberia. Now they were just wiped out. Ludmila and Konstantin Zurovlia are now buried in these icy wastes.
This is the graveyard for Vorkuta, where Ludmila and Konstantin are buried. Now, I've come out here with her best friend who doesn't want to be filmed because she's afraid. She's afraid that she'll end up in one of these.
Returned to the capital, Syktyvkar, to put some of my discoveries to United Russia's deputy leader for the Komi Republic, Yuri Bolobonov.
There's a lot of complaints that the elections were rigged. How do you react to those complaints?
He was dismissive of these complaints and said they were very few and only minor technical infringements.
But we were here during the Duma elections and we encountered about 6 young students who said that they'd been approached by United Russia to buy their vote for 400 rubles.
United Russia, he said, had a lot of political rivals, and these were most likely trying to make his party look bad. Mr. Bolobonov said that far from fearing a return to a one-party communist-style system, what Russia needed to organize people in a huge country facing complex political problems was a big, powerful party. A one-party Russia might be good for business and good for politicians. But I had found that very few ordinary Russians thought that it would be good for Russians.